Swimming pools are a great way to exercise or simply cool off and relax. But while you'd expect them to have been designed with your well-being as a top priority, that's not always the case. There are some swimming pools that have issues with overcrowding, malfunctions, and even hauntings. These are the top 15 most unsafe swimming pools in the world. Number 15. Bronte Rock Pool. Bronte Beach in Sydney, Australia is just over a mile south of the more famous Bondi Beach. But for locals, it's just as popular a place. It's there that an annual ocean swim race is held between the beach and Bondi, and it's also a favorite destination for surfers and swimmers. For those less confident in the ocean's waters, there's a 100-foot-long ocean pool to the south of the beach. Pools like this are common across Australia and give guests a way to swim in fresh, salty water while being within the relatively safe confines of a separate structure. On some days, however, it seems like the Bronte Rock Pool is just as dangerous, if not more so, than being in the ocean itself. That's because these pools' walls are close up to the sea, and when the waves pick up particularly high, they crash over the side and overwhelm the pool. Anyone in the water at the time has nowhere to go, and just have to hold on for dear life, hoping that it will pass quickly. The swells can be so powerful that you wouldn't even know there was a pool there, and it's only the presence of the safety cordons that breach above the waves that give any clue there's a human structure beneath it. Number 14. San Alfonso Del Mar. Hotels around the world try to design swimming pools that make them truly unique, but perhaps the most impressive of all can be found at the San Alfonso Del Mar Resort in Chile. Its outdoor pool holds the record as being the largest one on Earth, and it's simply gigantic. Built along the coastline, it's the equivalent of more than 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools, and it holds an astonishing 66 million gallons of water, at least 6 times as much as its nearest competitor. Covering an area of almost 20 acres, it's surprisingly deep, plunging more than 115 feet at parts, and it's filled with filtered seawater that sucks straight from the nearby ocean. Before you plan a trip to Chile to swim in the pool yourself, however, there's a problem. For many years, it's been expressly banned for anyone to actually swim in the water, and instead it's used solely for water sports. It was originally intended as a place where people could take a dip to cool off, but with its extraordinary size, it proved virtually impossible to have enough lifeguards on duty to keep everyone safe. After several reported accidents, a few of which ended in fatalities, the decision was made that it simply wasn't worth the risk. Number 13. The Azure Pool. On the face of it, the Azure Pool, when it was filled as recently as 1998, seems just like about any other. And while it's since been drained and the complex has fallen into a state of disrepair, you might think that all it needs is a little investment, and then the local community will be able to use it once more. The problem, however, is its location. It was one of the main public indoor swimming pools of the city of Pripyat, Ukraine, which was evacuated following the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986. The town was covered in radiation, and still to this day, almost 35 years after those tragic events, there are places in Pripyat that are still far too dangerous for anyone to spend much time in. The reason the pool was left open, however, is because liquidators worked on site and were responsible for dealing with the short and long-term consequences of the incident. Because it had a constant flow of fresh water that was treated with chemicals, the Azure Pool was seen as one of the cleanest places in the city and offered the liquidators a way to relax during their time off. When their job was done, there was no need for the pool anymore, so it was closed in 1998. But even knowing it was less radioactive than the rest of the city, would you have still felt safe swimming there? Number 12. Tokyo Summerland. Tokyo Summerland is an amusement park that's only open during the warmer months and offers a range of different pools, lagoons, slides, and rides that allow visitors to cool off and enjoy themselves. Japanese summers can get rather hot though, and with such a high population density in the city, the park can become packed full of people on a particularly warm day. The indoor wave pool at the park is generally regarded as the most crowded wave pool in the world, both because so many people want to go there, and the operators don't apply strict safety limits like they do elsewhere. This means that on busy days you can be in the pool but unable to see any water around you, and instead are squeezed in against the flesh of other swimmers. It almost looks as if it's a sea of heads, and while they may seem funny at first, there are serious safety issues that arise, particularly when the waves are turned on. Everyone begins bobbing up and down on the water, but if for any reason someone finds themselves in difficulty, there's virtually no way for a lifeguard to get to them to offer assistance. You're fully reliant on the people next to you helping you out of trouble, and that sounds like a recipe for disaster. Number 11. RMS Queen Mary. The RMS Queen Mary was a luxury cruise liner from Britain that operated between 1936 and 1969, with the exception of during the war years when it was refitted to be used as a troop transport. It became crucial in the post-war years for transatlantic travel, and was only in the 1960s with the advent of commercial air travel that it became too costly to run and was retired. The vessel is now permanently moored at Long Beach, California, where it functions as a tourist attraction with restaurants and hotel rooms, but it's the former first-class swimming pool that's become particularly famous. It's actually one of the most visited parts of the ship, even though it no longer contains any water, and that's because the place is believed to be haunted. It's the ship's history during the war that's led to these rumors, with stories of ghosts and dead soldiers walking the passageways and still living in some of the rooms. Visitors to the boiler room, for example, have reported hearing groans which are thought to be those of an 18-year-old sailor who was killed there when an emergency door closed on him. And the swimming pool is seen as the most haunted spot, with numerous reports of the presence of a young girl that runs around it trying to play hide-and-seek with anyone who ventures in. Number 10. The Pool of Death. Hawaii is one of the most stunning places on Earth, and it's no surprise that millions of people travel there each year for a vacation. With glorious beaches, perfect waters, and a number of luxurious resorts, virtually everything's taken care of for tourists. For those wanting to go off the beaten track a little, there's the opportunity to explore places that only locals know about. One of these on the island of Kauai is ominously named the Pool of Death, but despite the risks, people keep on going there. It's a naturally formed cove that's surrounded by volcanic rocks and is filled by seawater. It's one of the most beautiful swimming spots in the world, with calm, green water and spectacular views out across the coast. Things can change very quickly, though, because the pool is filled by the ocean from holes at the bottom of the pool. The ocean's waves can build up in intensity with very little warning and smash against the coastline, which makes the water levels of the pool rise and fall in an unpredictable fashion. If you get caught in there when this happens, you'll be thrown about against the walls, and even the strongest of swimmers can struggle to keep their heads above the surface. Over the years, a number of people have lost their lives in this pool, and in some cases, their bodies have been sucked away and never recovered. Number 9. Bandra Ohm Tower. Architects around the world are often guilty of prioritizing style over substance, but the people behind the Bandra Ohm Tower in India really haven't taken patrons' safety into mind with their designs. The 460-foot-tall building is inspired by the symbol for the Ohm restaurant and is currently under construction. With 30 floors of residential units, the idea is that it's meant to give a large sense of fluidity in space, something that's done by its curves, the large spherical clubhouse in the center, and the swimming pool balconies. Every one of these balconies has a small terraced area, and the rest is a swimming pool with a glass edge looking out across the city. But with no safety features, it will be extremely easy to swim up against the infinity edge and potentially fall over the side. There are other concerns with the pools too, such as whether the water can be regularly cleaned in the normal way, and how much privacy is truly afforded to any of the residents who use them. If you're looking for a place with an unusual pool, then this surely must be up there, but it's definitely not safe for families with kids or anyone who struggles with heights. We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Skellefteå. Skellefteå is a city on the northeastern coast of Sweden that was originally built to support workers of nearby mines, which are still, to this day, the region's largest employer. Every year, though, the city attracts visitors for a completely different reason, because it's host to the Open Scandinavian Championship in winter swimming. The events don't take place in a normal pool like you'll see at your local leisure center or in the Olympics, and instead they build a brand new venue each year that's cut directly into the ice of a small lake. Temperatures in the 82-foot-long pool plunge to near freezing, and the 400 competitors experience potentially dangerous side effects if they're in there for too long. Without any protection, you'll at first find it difficult to breathe. You definitely won't be able to talk, and you'll feel your heart pounding. Within 15 minutes, you'll probably start to lose consciousness, and you'd likely die within an hour. Of course, the people who do swim there are experienced ice swimmers and take the necessary precautions, but even so, and despite having medical teams on hand just in case anything goes wrong, there's always a few people who suffer from extreme hypothermia after being in the water for too long. Luckily, no one has died in recent years, but it's still an ever-present risk, and it's definitely not somewhere to go for a relaxing dip. Number 7. The Blue Lagoon. Authorities in the UK became concerned in early 2020 with reports of large numbers of people swimming in the so-called Blue Lagoon, a former quarry in Buxton, Derbyshire that's filled up over the past few decades with rainwater. The surrounding hills are the source of some of the purest drinking water in the country, so it's no surprise that visitors assume that the same could be said for the water in the perfectly blue pool. But that couldn't be further away from the truth, as this potentially very dangerous place to swim. A clue should be in the water's color. Even though we expect it to look blue, this isn't a sign of purity. It's in fact the result of toxic chemicals that have seeped into it from the surrounding rocks. It means that, worryingly, the pH levels of the water are around the same as you'd expect to find from bleach. Add to this the fact that a number of wrecked cars have been disposed of in the lake, there are countless animal carcasses in there too, and you're dealing with an extremely toxic place that could potentially cause serious health problems. Things got so bad that authorities were even forced to dump a large quantity of black dye into the lagoon with the hope that the altered color of the water would prevent people from going in. Although even with this and the signs warning of the dangers, there were still some who continued swimming there. Number 6. Pierde el Agua. In the Mexican state of Oaxaca, there's a stunning set of natural rock formations that look as if they're a frozen waterfall plunging down a cliff. They're the result of a series of natural hot springs that are rich in calcium carbonate and other minerals which over the years have been deposited over the edge and hardened to create this phenomenon. On one of the cliffs, there's a series of naturally formed rock pools, along with 2 artificial ones, and these have become a popular tourist attraction both because of the perceived health benefits of swimming in the water and because of the stunning views you're treated to. One of the pools allows you to swim virtually right up to the edge of the cliff face, and it's one of the most beautiful swimming locations in the world. But there are several dangers associated with it too, and you really need to keep your wits about you if you ever travel there. The first is that as natural formations, there's always the possibility that part of the cliff will collapse, and anyone in the pools at the time will be thrown over the edge. This becomes even greater a risk when you learn that the region is frequently subjected to earthquakes, which have dramatically altered the landscape several times in the past few decades. It's also a region of intense political unrest, with some local communities disapproving of the increasing tourist industry that's sprung up around the pools. The National Guard has on a few occasions had to move in to calm things down, but the disagreements are far from being settled. Number 5. The Dynamo Pool. With a large volume of water being contained in an artificial swimming pool, it's vital that the correct steps are taken to keep it clean. Otherwise, it would become a breeding ground for countless infectious illnesses. Facilities around the world treat the water with chlorine, but it's vital that this is done carefully and properly. The chlorine itself doesn't do anything to disinfect the water, but it's what it produces that is useful. When liquid chlorine is added to the water, it produces hypochlorous acid, which kills germs, but in the right conditions, this can further convert into hydrochloric acid and start causing problems. In early December of 2020, Russian authorities witnessed how wrong this can go and were forced to act quickly to prevent a catastrophe from developing. Something had gone seriously wrong at the Dynamo Pool in Astrakhan, and more than 250 times the upper allowable limit of chlorine had been released into the water. This soon resulted in the water becoming far more acidic, and dangerous gases began to be released into the air. 21 children who were in the pool at the time were hospitalized with symptoms ranging from severe breathing difficulties to burns and injured eyes. Most of the pools have safeguards to prevent this from happening, but something failed at the pool that day, and had it not been noticed as soon, it could have easily resulted in fatalities. Any pool like this that doesn't appear to have been maintained to a good level should be avoided, because they can soon become dangerously unsafe. Number 4. The Devil's Pool. When you go on vacation, it's time to explore the local amenities and cultures, and probably do things you'd never even consider at home, particularly when you're visiting somewhere with stunning scenery. It's not uncommon to take small risks to get to the perfect vantage point, and there's no better example of this than the Devil's Pool in Zambia. One of the most stunning waterfalls in the world, the Victoria Falls, can be found there, and they attract huge numbers of tourists each year. While most look at the falls from afar, there are some who want to get as close as possible to them, and somehow a small pool has been found right up against the edge of the drop. No one knows how it was first discovered, and you certainly can't tell it's there just from looking at it. But just before the water goes over the edge, there's a carved-out pool that's large enough for a few people to sit in the water without being subjected to the strong current. Tour guides delight in being the first to dive in to their guests' horror, but once they see it's, quote, safe, they jump in after. Of course, this pool isn't as safe as some would have you believe, and there have been a few instances of people who have miscalculated their position and been swept over the edge. If you're willing to get in, you'll have one of the most incredible experiences ever. But is it really worth the risk? Number 3. Action Park Tidal Pool. Action Park was America's most notorious water park when it was opened between 1978 and 1996. Not because of any particularly awesome rides or facilities, but because it wasn't exactly the safest of places to go. There were regular reports of people suffering serious injuries on the attractions, but arguably the most dangerous place of all was the tidal wave pool. It was like any other pool with artificial waves, but something in its design meant that lifeguards were constantly having to rescue people. At 250 feet long and 100 feet wide, as many as 1,000 people could be in the water at any one time. The wave machines would activate for 20 minutes at a time and would create waves of up to 40 inches in height. But this caused a problem whereby people in the water would lose any gauge of how deep it was and would often float into the deep end and struggle to find their footing. It was in the tidal pool that the first fatality of an Action Park guest occurred in 1982, and another died 5 years later. This resulted in needing at least 12 lifeguards on duty at all times, and it soon became known as the Grave Pool. In recent years, the Action Park has been reopened, and the tidal pool is one of the few original attractions that are still in operation, but alterations were made to its depth so the same issues wouldn't arise, and it's now far safer. Number 2. Sky Condos, Peru. Architectural designs around the world are continuously pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and this has led to even more radical ideas becoming a reality. But at what cost? With the focus being on a building that looks unlike any other, there are concerns that less attention is being paid to the safety of those using the structures, and the Sky Condos in Peru are a perfect example of this. Under construction by a golf course in the country's capital, Lima, the 20-story residential building is made of concrete and a glass facade. It definitely looks modern, but the most unusual feature are the diving board-like structures that project from it, and amazingly, these are swimming pools. In fact, they project out from open courtyards that give amazing views out across the surrounding countryside. But for anyone living there, it's just a short walk to the private swimming pool for a swim. Worryingly, though, there are no plans to install safety cordons or barriers to the pools, because this would affect the view and means that it would only take one wrong move for someone to fall over the edge. Number 1. Shuyiyun Water Park. The Shuyiyun Water Park is one of the most popular attractions for locals and tourists in northeast China and offers the perfect place to cool off during hot weather. It has a number of different amenities on offer, with various pools, slides, restaurants, and rides. But the most popular has always been the park's wave pool. As with others around the world, the machinery generates small waves on the water's surface, and swimmers bob up and down as they pass. In late July of 2019, however, something went terribly wrong and showed quite how dangerous pools like this can actually be. It was a particularly hot day, so the pool was packed beyond capacity, and this happened to be the moment when there was a malfunction in the machinery. Initially, it was claimed that this was exacerbated by an irresponsible engineer who was drunk, but these stories have since been debunked. Whatever the true reason for the incident, the machine caused waves much larger than intended and sent people flying into the air and crashing back down onto the tiles. According to reports, 44 people were injured with bruises and cuts, and around 10 of them suffered serious injuries like broken bones and concussions. Malfunctions like this are thankfully rare, but it's not the first time it's happened. It certainly won't be the last, now that there are more wave pools around the world than ever before. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.